So the jungle's due on Friday. I might make a little change on what we're doing class though, because we've got to do a registration. We go about 15 minutes, then we go up to the library, take about 10 minutes, and then we gotta come down. So I don't know, it kind of messes up what I wanted to do, but we'll see. It won't change anything for you. Yeah. Did you get one? Oh, that's asking too much. I'll give you the assignment. Anybody else need it? Anybody else? I think we have a couple people gone. Yeah, River. And wow, that really came by already. Okay, so couple of really quick. So on Friday, make sure you have that green registration form. It has to be signed.
I'm sure he turned it up.
If you do not have that green form. Oh, my heater was making weird sounds, so I turned the heat up and now it's a little warm. You have the green form, that means you gotta go wait in line with all the other yahoos who forgot their form and they go up to the bottom of the pile and you probably have to go back to your freshman year. Start over. Once again, I think that's a logical way to go, right? Yeah, I think you're with me on that. And so, like I told you yesterday, don't worry if a class has a conflict now. There's 2 classes you want to take. If it's conflicting now, there's a good chance it won't be next year. Sign up for both. You can always go back and either pick one if they are conflicting. Don't worry about it. Same deal. Don't limit yourself to the number of classes you're going to take. Take the class you're interested in. If you have to make choices down the road, make choices. Take advantage of the classes we offer here. There are great electives that we have in all the departments. And this makes it hard. I can't believe I'm saying this, but even the science department. Yeah, good campus. Yeah. Huh? You can't bring. I don't want to do that. You understand, right? You're with me on this.
Pretty fish.
So of course, science, that's great. They all have great. Let me tell you very quickly about, oh, I fill all that out. Or third graders. Third graders, terrifying. They're just big enough to cause damage. All right. That is, what is that? Okay. Oh. So. Social department has some electives. Let me tell you real fast. Like, first off, like I said yesterday, I think every one of you would be making a terrible mistake if you did not take AP government. A terrible mistake. I think you would regret it. I've had it every year. A few people took AP US history. I thought, I'm going to take it easy. Everyone else, including the few who did it this year. Boy, did I miss this. Just because American studies doesn't quite mesh up, and you're used to something a little more strenuous. So just trust me. And it's not as doesn't have as much breadth of material you need to know as this class. So it's a little bit, not easier is the wrong word, but you can just change it. You have more like thematic, and then being election years, we'll talk about the election and things like that. But we don't have a lot of time to do in this class. And so let me tell you the other electives. First off, we do have AP Euro. So AP European History, some of you have already taken it. Great class. And Pierce does a good job with former student line. So despite that, she does a very good job. And I highly recommend it. A few of you took it last year, and I know it gives you a head start. If you're more interested in history, it's European history from 1500 to today. I would recommend it, but I get it to your senior year. You have a lot of AP classes and a lot of classes, but still something to think about if you're interested in. Great class. She does a good job. And I taught it for years, so I just ran out. I didn't have time anymore, and I'm so glad she took it. He's been doing great. There's another class that if you're interested more in world history, but don't want to take an AP class, we do have a world history class. And world history, you can take it either first semester or second semester or the whole year. And so it's not the same class each semester. So like first semester is more like early from like middle before like 1500. And another one I used to teach, but same deal, I don't have time to teach it. And Mr. Solomon teaches that. And he's you start with prehistory, then do Sumeria, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. The things that I love. Part of the reason I really enjoy teaching that. Little medieval history. I very much enjoy like Chinese history and Japanese history, especially medieval history. So It's a fun class to take. Second semester, a little bit more modern. Once again, if you're more interested in history, but don't want to take the strenuous AP class, but still a good class, I highly recommend that. And I don't think I'll be teaching that again. Hey, but I just have too many other classes. And then we also have, okay, I don't know about philosophy. I thought it was going to be offered this year. It wasn't. Or next year, it wasn't this year. See if it's on there. I don't.
It's not.
I've been told, I told first and third period that philosophy, I thought for sure it was going to be. Then they said, nope, it's not there. Well, philosophy would have been a good option for those who are interested in it, but I'm sorry, that's the thing to be there. That's a shame. It's not on. All right. Well, that's too bad. And we also have sociology. Did you take it this year or last year? And I have no idea who's teaching it this year. Mr. Kelly taught it, and he moved that semester to work for the state, and so I have no idea what's going to happen. So sociology about class, how societies and cultures develop, and it's always kind of interested me because anthropology is a form of like prehistory of how cultures develop. So you took this one semester, right? Yeah. Yeah. And one thing great about a semester class, they go through like highlights of it where you can get like a good taste if you like it and like that material, but also just broaden your own horizons. Good class about society. So it's elements of history, but definitely a social study. We have one that's always kind of in the middle of social studies and science because it kind of makes sense. It's in the middle of psychology. Even though it's in the social studies department, Mr. Ryan Ray teaches that. Former student. Is there anyone in that class? No one's in that one? So there's psychology 1 and psychology 2. Same deal. If you're interested in it, that's a good place to start. And secondly, it's a place if you just want to enrich your knowledge and also want to help you later on. Just be a good topic. I think a lot of psychology, so I know a lot about it. He really enjoys it, so good class.
Does law and order count? It's like it's social.
No, that's it. Don't ask why, but that goes in business. It doesn't make sense.
Beats of that too.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Round, it's degree was social. Then later on got the business. So he really is kind of a crossover. Yeah, that's kind of social stuff. And am I missing one? So special topics in American history. That is what I teach. And about 30 years ago, when I came up with this, me and another teacher, we came up with this. The idea was in a survey level class like this, we have to go through so fast through everything. We can't go into detail, kind of give relationships, and also, watch a couple movies and how they fit a story, do little things like that, and do your own personal research. Didn't have time in a survey level class like ours, where we have to go so fast and get so much in. I tell you, AP testing coming up very fast. It'll be here like that. And you have lots of tests now. But in that class, what I do is I kind of break it up into a bunch of topics. Some are a little light, some are a little bit more serious, but they all have American history related. But then we can do a little personal research. Everybody in class has to do some research and presentations to class about whatever topic they do. So you have to get in front of people, which is a very valuable skill, trust me. And so I pick a couple that are serious, not so serious. Like last semester, I always start with Vietnam War and then because we can't go over too much detail. So I went about Vietnam War and what happened, but also we did about citizens culture, a great place to begin. And then we did things like conspiracy. Talk about how America's conspiracy theories, and then they research conspiracy theories and did presentation. We did other ones that are we did history of gambling and sports, which actually was really fun gift, and a lot about American history. This semester, I always start with the Cold War and horror movies and how they relate. So it's a little bit about history of music, but it's also at the same time go through the Cold War and how the Cold War fears directly led to almost all time horror movies and thriller movies of today. Part of the Cold War was all set in 1947, and everyone started seeing flying saucers. Whatever, some flying saucers in 1947. True, I mean, no one did, just didn't exist. Why? Cold War. And we're actually watching a movie, one of the greatest horror movies ever made, 1955, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So it's a fun thing that we wouldn't have time in this class. And then we're gonna do cults in America. Cults are really interesting, but also terrifying, and Americans are really susceptible to it. So you start a cult and go, no, we do not. Best not to know. And, but a few other units, like we're gonna do the 2008 financial crash. We just look at economics and a little history, but it's also just things like that. It's a little serious, but really interesting. You would not believe the financial system in the United States. It will blow your head. I always finish with history of Washington. And so that's what we do in class and special topics. So that's class I teach. And I think some of you might really enjoy that. And you can take it one semester or both semesters. And I have a few students who this happens every year. You take it 2 years in a row. In fact, I had somebody who took it last year and then Rick just joined again this semester because he might be in class. And so I would recommend that class if you're interested in that, but don't forget we got so many other lessons. Take advantage of it. You won't get any chance again. Really do take advantage of it. And if you got to play with your schedule down the road, it takes you a few seconds. Do it. Take advantage. If you have any questions about other departments, I'll be glad to answer them incorrectly. I'll make stuff up and sound like I know. If you have to talk to other teachers about it, you do it. Or same thing, you have to see your counselor. Don't forget that stuff. Becomes a pain for everybody. Yeah, remember it. Friday, we'll do it. And also bribes help. I'm just throwing that out there. You give me a good bribe and I'll make sure that I keep it. All right. What are you issue? Oh, who wrote the book, Influence of Sea Power? And who was elected president in 1896? And what became dominant? McKinley got elected. Oh, what party was McKinley? And who absorbed the populace? Democrats. And what became dominant? Not only urban and financial interests, but what became dominant? John D. Rockefeller gave over $700,000 to which one of the two candidates? Yeah, to McKinley. He said avoid foreign entanglements, but no abortion. And what was the Stuart Holiday in 1867? We got to here.
Yeah, that's a good look. Yeah.
Right here.
Right there.
All right, let's get going on this. So, got to build a navy. We got bases. Britain. So we didn't talk about Britain at all. Did I talk? And then we talk about other countries that read it. Germany. Okay, good. Let's get to the next one then. I wouldn't recommend reading the book unless you're really into naval. I don't know, biased navals. Bias. Who isn't? Imperialistic fervor. Fervor is like this fervor is like this massive nationwide enthusiasm for imperialism. Then people are saying, boy, the United States is great. Shouldn't we be a great power like the rest of the world? It's intensely nationalistic. Britain is great. They have an empire around the world. Shouldn't the United States? The British would always say the sun never set on the British Empire. That would become a very famous saying about 1880. Because of their vast empire, that's only going to get bigger. Aren't we a good country? Shouldn't we expand? So here's another one of those satirical magazines. Yeah, I'm sure. Fuck, here's Judge. Americans get one half of the world, the British get the other. Not the way it happened, but that nationalism. Cecil Rhodes would become rich by taking diamond mines in South Africa and start his own country called Rhodesia, his own colony. He was one of the most brutal, wealthy imperialists. But he was also known for pushing British imperialism. This is the Rhodes Colossus, one of the most famous cartoons of the 1890s. And it's him conquering Africa for Britain from Cairo, Egypt, to Cape Town, South Africa. So the Colossus of the Pacific, Uncle Sam from the US, and that's Caribbean and Panama Canal, to the Philippines. Aren't we great too? And the last one. Oh, here's another one of these cartoons. This is nationalism, pro-colonialism. Here's Uncle Sam growing. Lots of these. I've shown you one already, getting bigger and bigger because the country, just a little baby in 1783. Louisiana, the Civil War, 1898, and look after the Spanish-American War. Busting out of his breeches now with a powerful navy. Aren't we great? Nationalism. Here's the key thing. The world stage. And because we have an empire, all the other great powers of the world are now coming to us. America is great. The last biggie, social Darwinism. That dominant philosophy. Social Darwinism. John Fiske would write a series of books that are kind of history, kind of sciencey. Here's Fiske, my friend Jason. And they're all basically about the discovery of America or things like that. But they're all laid out that the duty of those on top, the superior race, was to save civilization. If not, civilization, what we know was fade. If you start race mixing and mongrelize the race, and that's what they would literally say, mongrelize. And what is the superior race? Anglo-Saxon. They should be and take over. So the discovery of America was about the Anglo-Saxon race taking over the Americans. The Americans. Anglo-Saxon, English. So Britain. So, but it's not just Britain. The Angles and the Saxons were Germanic tribes who crossed over the English Channel about 400 CE and conquered Britain took over Roman Britain. So there's Germanic too. And so it kind of fits in, going to my Cold War map. Not use Irish, not all this. This part of Germany called Saxony. And so that's that picture. I showed you one version of this. Caucasian in the middle, and all the different inferior races. And social Darwinism was the history of the United States. This laid it out that it's a story of the manifest destiny of the conquering superior Anglo-Saxon race. Which is different because they're going to be Southern Germans, Italians, Spanish, let alone people outside of Europe. So there's just kind of, I'm going to make a dividing line. Going into the 20th century, for the next 30 years, will be a massive fight about what is white. What is white. And it's mind-boggling how, at least to me personally, I can't help it, how obsessed they were about colors. And that gets to this. This is from another book called The Hierarchy of Race, which fits in very well with social Darwinism. So this should be a lot different than what we talked about before. But these are two things that are a little bit shocking. I'll explain this so bad in just 1 second. The hierarchy of race. So these are 5 of the 39 races. So basically, just dividing each other up. And do you notice it? So we have Mongolian, Ethiopian, American, Malay. That's Indonesian, Malay. It was British colony Malaya, today it's Malaysia, and Caucasian. What do you notice right away? He's looking right at you. Oh. And everyone else is veering away. Dark, in the shadows. Remember I told you about color became signs of good and evil, civilized and uncivilized. And there's something else. When they made this, and this is going to be really common, I'll show you another example in a little bit. It's almost exactly the same, just in a different context. How are we supposed to feel about it? Let's say. I want you to feel that shades of the moon. Something really bad thing happened. That is implying also that something is happen to Caucasians. But it's blind that those four might do something really bad. Remember I talked about race mixing, vice. It's supposed to be Linda. From them. So, beginning about 1880, they started having machine manufactured soap. Different than what we have today, soap. And they really jumped in on imperialism. All the soap companies. You're going to get companies that still exist today, like Ivory Soap, have ads similar to this, but Pears jumped in completely. Pears have been absorbed to another company, but they sold bars of soap. And it fits in very well with that hierarchy based upon color of skin, because they said soap is something that imperialists can use for civilization, to civilize folks. Giving soap, uncivilized, with soap, they become more white. Oh, it's so blatantly awful. And it's really common. And they'll talk about soap as a tool of imperialism, soap as civilization. Soap everywhere. So, the term for this we call for imperialism is white man's burden. Rudyard Kipling was going to be one of the most famous. He was one of the most famous poets in British history. And at first he was really nationalist. Nationalism. Britain is going to be great. And he wrote all these poems to justify India. One of the most famous would be The White Man's Burden. And it's pure social Darwinism. Here it is in the newspaper. I like when they think about palm reading. But White Man's Burden, 1900. After the Spanish-American War, the United States has conquered Cuba. And there's a real cry, we're going to poor Cubans just go off and be alone? Are we going to help them? And so this justifies helping them. This is Cuba. The White Man's Burden. So it's from the Detroit Journal, newspaper there. And what person would get famous for leading the Rough Riders and charging up San Juan Hill? Maybe Roosevelt. That was in your reading. Guess we probably should have a small. But this is supposed to be him taking Cuba. And or helping take Cuba, the one that spot for the Spanish 45 area of San Juan Hill. I'll tell you about that tomorrow. And so this is White Man's Burden. It's supposed to represent the Americans taking Cuba at great sacrifice. Not because they want to get rich, but it is our burden to spread civilization. I mean, look, that's a soldier who died. But they're taking the hill, as in, we're leading the Cubans to civilization. So about 70% of the population of Cuba to this day is of African descent, slavery. That's the Cuban. That's how they drew a Cuban in 1900. Look at the face. That should remind you of those faces I showed you, those horrible racialized caricatures to justify slavery and about racism. And remember Jim Crow? Exact same thing. Like, not human, in a grass skirt, uncivilized. Can't do it themselves, but we'll get them the civilization. Now, remember the way they drew that face. Those lips, those eyes, horrific expressions. But remember that. We'll come back to that look. So there's another one. U.S., Britain, bragging the people that they have conquered, their colonists up the hill. Cuba, Hawaii, look at the face. British colonies like Africa, this is their part of China, India, up to civilization. But this is the part, I mean, this is amazing. So the white man's burden, that's a big deal. And they got to get, this is their problems on these rocks. Oppression, ignorance, violence, brutality, slavery. Interesting how they put that in there. It's just fascinating. So we're going to jump right to this. Or else, if we don't, they start talking about the end of the Anglo-Saxon race. These are two books. The one on the left was one of the most famous books of that era. At least when it took this idea, and they literally said, the threat against white world supremacy. White supremacy was used all the time as a term after about 1890. You see more and more today white nationalism. You wouldn't see that until about 1920. But I think we get what happened. This wasn't as well known, but the threat is coming. And you still see people use those same kind of racialized characteristics to this day. Some people in a great amount of power are doing it right now. And so it's still around, and we see it really happening here to justify colonization. So, that can't be. You all see the problem there? The poor chicken in the secondhand smoke. Do you agree with me?
Same thing with dogs. Yes.
Yeah. And who's in charge? This can only mean one thing, people. Hey, let's write a thesis. So, let's review very quickly. This is a question we've had in the past before. What methods did slaveholders use to justify slavery? And remember the thesis format, the main topic of the question, or the prompt, your position, something to tie it together, and then your subtopics. That will be your topics for the paragraph, A, B, and C. We're just reviewing right now. You don't have to write this thesis, just review. So this is one from the past. Let's just review, look at it, just remember how to do it. Justify slavery, got the X. Here are the Y. My whole paragraph will be about how racism and that ideology. First body paragraph, second body paragraph, third body paragraph. If you can't think of a good why, you can't think of a specific social, economic, or political event or philosophy, just say social or economic changes. So just another review. Here's another example. I have no idea why I capitalized social, but I wanted to. So same deal. So my why, I'm going to talk about social and economic changes. Racism, positive good theory, and economic benefits. That's social and economic. So that's a good review. So if you can't think of something to tie it all together, a specific fact, use social, economic, or political. Why? Because you're going to do a little practice. Let's write a thesis statement. So you got about 2.5 minutes. 150, 149, 68, 81. Oh, and that's a Coty. My favorite.
Cookie window. My grandpa had it.
Oh. Kind of raccoon cat-like creatures. Kind of awesome. If you can't think of a good why that's specific, use social, political, or economic. And don't forget, I've literally just given you 5 reasons the United States justified imperialism. And don't forget, we have colonial imperialism, economic imperialism, nationalism, all kinds of stuff. And that's Okay, you should be nearing the finish. Go back and make sure you have a good X. You got the main the main parts of the question. You've got the topic. A Y, something to tie together. A, B, and C. And think of A, B, and C. I could write a short A, D, and A, B, and C.
So. Like that.
Okay. Everyone got one? When you are done now, exchange with a neighbor. Exchange with a neighbor, look at it, see if you got all the forms, so put that away. Take a look at it. If anybody wants me to read theirs, I can read a couple of them. So this was when I was 50, I was sitting. Yeah. That was fun. I mean, that's from over here. Right, you can see the why. Very good. Yeah. The most overshadowing. At least, as long as you get the main elements, you have something to tie together. Bring it, put that time in the time. Anybody like it? Did anybody write an essay? Did you read anybody's essay that changed your life? Is your life now different after reading somebody else's? It better be.
Chakra is pretty bad too.
Maybe you're 4 out of 10. Well, I can understand. Want to read it to everybody?
I can't understand.
Have you read it real quick? I give it like a 6.
There's something.
Add maybe to this one. Very good.
Oh, yes.
I would say 4.5. 4.5.
I think it's a minimum.
Yeah. 4.3. Anybody, would anybody like to read theirs? Anybody got one that's so good it you just want to show off?
I think I told. So don't you guys think the light?
Wait, I like how everyone passes the buck. Everyone's just passing the buck. Nobody would like to read theirs? Any volunteers? I've read some good ones. Read it.
The United States justified imperialism to expand power, claiming white supremacy, an attempt to civilize others, and for economic gain.
So good, the blueprint works, maybe something like economic power, something like that, or political power on that, very good. So you just add one more word and you got a lot. Anybody else? One more. What's up? Everyone, read yours because you've been volunteering, everybody.
In the United States used social Darwinism to justify imperialism by convincing Americans with propaganda, enslaving or economically imperializing groups, and using the economic benefits of colonies to show that the U.S. was helping civilize colonies.
Yeah, or I might add like put social Darwinism in there, but oh, you have that in the beginning.
So sorry.
Yeah, so that ties for the why. Very good. You want to see mine? You like the coding? Should make the coding bigger. Not a heck of a lot different than the ones I read. No, you didn't have to put the X and Y in. I'm just doing it for you to see. Nothing spectacular. So one paragraph about panic, one paragraph about Mahan, one paragraph about social Darwinism, ties together nationalist economics. That's pretty generic, but it's something a lot of people did something like that. We will do more. We'll have a DDQ to run in a few weeks, 2 weeks, 2, 3. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We'll talk more about it. It's a 55 multiple choice. They're called short answer questions. People start doing it, but basically these short answer questions, 3 short IDs. And you have 3 of them, that's 9. And then 2 full lessons. One's a DBQ and one's not. Huh? Or for each one, I don't have to track of time. It's called LDQ, but it's. We'll do another one here. We're gonna do another one. Yeah, we've done one. We did a lot of, I know there's a lot of stuff on the clock, but, all right. So, let's go take your notes out and let's get back to work a little bit. Oh, I would like to re-review those readings. It might be, first come, first serve, but we gotta be clearing out the room.
Are you retiring? He's here.
Huh? I don't know, but you guys are graduating. Actually, back.
It doesn't affect me, so I don't.
Why not?
I get to have you next year, that's all.
I don't know. Here's the thing, I might be graduating too someday.
Let's go.
I too might be graduating. So, Hawaii. So Hawaii puts the whole thing together. The whole thing together. It talks all the reasons for imperialism. You can see how the United States took Hawaii. First was economic imperialism. 1849, the U.S. made it a protectorate, meaning it was a treaty where the U.S. controlled their trade, also their taxation. Hawaii was a kingdom. Hawaii was a kingdom. And you can see why they did it. If you look here, right in the middle of the Pacific, there's no good island bases between Hawaii and California. So Hawaii was needed. Kind of racing Britain to get this treaty. It was for whaling ships at first, but by 1875, you're getting a lot of expats. Expats are citizens of the U.S. who left the country and moved to another country. They're called expatriates or expats. Remember the same thing happened. Expats went to Texas and went to California. That was part of Mexico. Why? They started growing sugar about something that became a splash. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you what a big deal pineapples became about the 1800s. Pineapples were a symbol of wealth. If you had a fresh pineapple, which they can't last a very long time, that's like you've made it. Pineapple, like people would put like wallpapers became a big deal at the end of that last century. Wallpapers of pineapples. That was wealth. But by 1890, most of the land were owned by these U.S. expats, these planters. These the arable land, the good land. And most native Hawaiians who owned the land communally, they lost their land. Well, in the late 1880s, a new monarch took the throne in Hawaii. Her name was Queen Liliuokalani. So that's Queen Liliuokalani. Right there, that's about 1892. She's monarch of Hawaii, but she's stuck with all these treaties, and the natives are basically not quite slaves, but peasants working on these plantations. Her slogan was Hawaii for the Hawaiians. And their idea was, we'll call it land reform in the 20th century through today, but it's basically give the land back to the peasants. Force the expats to sell the land. So pass a law saying you have to sell the land. We'll give you money, but you got to give it to the government, and then the government will divvy it up to the peasants. Land reform. And you can imagine how the planters felt about land reform. Especially with pineapples becoming such a big deal. And because of the new production techniques, sugar was growing in popular demand. So what did they call her? Well, that's her, right? This is from a Californian newspaper, but this clearly had the visions or the view of the planters. They said this was incompetent native rule, filled with vice and immorality, and that's the kind of leadership you get. That's Queen Liliuokalani. That's Hawaii. And remember that face I showed you about white man's burden? Look how they draw her. Nothing at all like the picture. They don't care. They're trying to make her look like some human in their volcanic government. Look at the whole body is made that way. Scandalous government, gross immorality. On Maui, the United States had built a naval base, another treaty. Pearl Harbor, That was too shallow. They'd have to dredge it in the next century. But that means there's sailors and Marines, naval infantry. Thus, she wouldn't be in power if not for the United States propping her up. That's what it's claiming, which is not true, but they're saying she's, and there's, begin this propaganda campaign to show how horrible her leadership is. And a lot of, look what happens when she's in power. It's going to destroy all of this wealth we're making for a time to view. And that would begin a revolution in Hawaii. Now, I should have put the other quotes around the end, but for some reason I quoted on Hawaii. It's not going to change. Revolution. Well, this should remind you of other revolutions. Remember Texas and California. So, one more big thing happened. Remember the McKinley tariff? It raised tariffs on sugar. The planters worried about paying this tax. Actually, I should have put this a little bit differently. It was just increasing the cost of their sugar in the US. And so they get annexation. You get annexation, you don't have to worry about the tariffs. You don't have to worry about the tariffs. You can sell more sugar. And so we have the Queen and the tariff. And so in 1893, they organized a coup, an attempt to overthrow Queen Billy Buchanan. I'll explain this guy with whatever about him. It's great beer in a sec. But here's the deal. The US has passed away outnumbered, but they're better armed. They had a very well-armed militia of expats, mostly Americans, few Brits, but there's something else. The Marines and also sailors joined the coup. Rushed her palace and imprisoned her. Now, Cleveland, who was president, did not order this. The United States government in DC didn't do it. They just did it there on the island. Remember this. This will become a template down the road. And the US kind of tried to do this in California. So they joined, they arrested the Queen and put a bunch of charges on her from everything from corruption to murder. And basically made it clear, abdicate or you'll be in chains the rest of your life. And then they created the Republic of Hawaii. 1894, Sanford Ballard Dole would become president of Hawaii. Much like there was remember the Verifying Republic of California and the Lone Star Republic of Texas. Okay, first off, you got to admit that is pretty awesome. Dole, what would its family start? Yeah, that would be the corporation now, Dole, which is a big holding company. Now it's owned by. That's what they're owned by Pepsi. But he started that. Yes, I had a Dole banana for my snack. So, extra credit for the beer. What do you think? 9 points extra credit in this class. I know some of you might think that's unfair to some of you. I don't make the rules. I'm just following. But if you do grow this in the next 4 days, I'll give you 400% credit, extra credit in all your math points. Yeah. I promise. I can do that. Just go tell your math teacher. They don't want it. Now, they wanted annexation, just like Texas and California. But Cleveland was opposed. Cleveland thought this went against American values of self-determination. What was his example? The American Revolution. We're not going to conquer somebody. I should have, though. Cleveland didn't say the same things about conquering this land. So it's us, it's morality that's a little bit, a little bit hit and miss there. But then Hawaii was in limbo. Then McKinley became president. And with McKinley, we have the Spanish-American War. And using the euphoria of at least at first, the victory of the Spanish-American War, the US just annexed Hawaii after it was part of it. And that's how Hawaii became a colony of the United States. Then eventually a state in America. That's Dole getting sworn in as the territorial governor. And here shows the nationalism and the rivalry with Britain. Here's the United States. This character right here is named John Dole. It's kind of the symbol of Britain. I know, it's kind of weird. But they're playing chess over colonies. And the United States just took, and look how they draw the line. See the face? They can't govern themselves. That's what they're trying to present in the United States style. So that is a text piece of all imperialism. And so in 1941, when Japan attacked the US naval base at Pearl Harbor, it was a colony. It was a colony. Now, the United States would make that a state in 1959, along with Alaska, same year. And that will give it some 56. We still have a few other very large colonies that are still territories. They're not states. Like Puerto Rico is probably the biggest. Puerto Rico has a lot bigger population than Montana. And a few others like DC, but those are other stories. So let's get to the Spanish-American War. We're just going to start at just a couple of one thing really quick. Here's another one of these. Look at Uncle Sam busting through his breeches. That's McKinley as a tailor. Those are shears, like he's a. So for a tailor, and it says enlightened foreign policy, rational expansion. It's not for money, it's rational. Remember the US had wanted Cuba before? Do you remember the term filibusters? Is this something familiar to you? And they thought they could make it into slave state. So the US always looked at Cuba 90 miles off of Florida, still does. The US still tries to coerce Cuban government to this day. We are essentially blockading Cuba right now. But Jose Marte was a young lawyer, Cuban lawyer, who organized a rebellion, one of many in the late 1880s against Cuba. It was known as Cuba Libre. And by 1890, 1891, they had a very successful guerrilla war using the mountains and jungles of the interior of Cuba to hit and run attacks on Spain. And Spain was weakening fast. It was a very weak country. These are some of the Cuban guerrillas. I like that picture. I just think that was very cool. And they're doing really well. And Marty went to the United States a couple times and did a speaking tour to try to get American support. So people in America were following Cuba Libre. He would die in 94, but he would set the stage. If you go to Havana today, no, I've not been in Havana. I'd really like to go to Cuba and start looking things up. Of course, I have to go to Canada to get there. But there's a massive statue of Marty. Tomorrow, finishes. Sound good? We'll fight a war. If you have any questions about registration that I can't answer, I can answer anything. I can answer any question you ask.